Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisors, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 15 years now, we've been asking the Franchipreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Peter Hans, and since 2005, Peter Hans has been the president of Discovery Map International, a leading provider of curated guides to top tourist attractions in cities and towns throughout North America. We're going to talk to Peter about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
Are you one of those special people who are willing to go after your dreams and goals? Are you ready to fulfill that dream of owning your own business with the security of a proven brand? The opportunity to take control of your future and own a Rita's Italian Ice franchise is within your reach.
Rita's is seeking success-oriented individuals who are ready to make a change in their life, and Rita's offers unparalleled training and support to assure your success. And did you know the frozen treat industry is a recession-proof industry, and there are Rita's in 23 states currently with 540 stores open. Rita's Italian Ice has been around for 25 years and is listed as a top-performing franchise by the Wall Street Journal.
Now here's the really good part. Rita's Italian Ice is a unique and amazing taste treat. It's smoother than a snow cone, and it combines ice with real fresh fruit. The real fruit adds dramatically to the taste, and it comes in over 40 flavors. The ice and fruit are mixed on site and made fresh daily, and it is delicious.
You'll want to know more about this exciting and successful franchise opportunity. Go to www.ownaritas.com and get all your questions answered. That's www.ownaritas.com to take control of your dreams and future today. You don't want to wait any longer to be a part of this adventure. www.ownaritas.com.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 15 years now, we've been asking the Franchipreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Peter Hans, and since 2005, Peter Hans has been the president of Discovery Map International, a leading provider of curated guides to top tourist attractions in cities and towns throughout North America. Hi, Peter. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Marty. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you, Peter. This is my pleasure. You know, I've been a fan of your product for such a long time, and I can't believe, we've been doing the show 15 years, and I never had you on the show, so I'm really excited to take the chance to speak with you today.
Oh, great. That's good news.
Where are you calling from today, Peter?
I'm calling from Waitsfield, Vermont, which is a little town in the beautiful Mad River Valley in central Vermont, and I can tell you that it's just starting to snow here right now.
You're kidding. Oh, it's just in time for Thanksgiving, right?
Exactly.
Oh, geez. Well, it's a beautiful part of the country, though, Peter. I've never been up there, but I've heard, wonderful things about that area, so I think that's terrific. Maybe, we can kind of go back to the beginning, because Discovery Map International really does have a long history. And, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and maybe a little bit about the history of the organization, Peter.
Sure. I grew up in the Northeast in Albany, New York, and I spent most of my adult life in New England, kind of the Boston and Vermont areas, as well as a good stint overseas. Wow. And when I came home from being overseas for about 12 years, I came back to Waitsfield, where I bought a home, and the business was called Resort Maps in those days, and owned by a couple, Larry and Kathy Murphy, and I was working at a small defense contractor at the time, and we got together and decided, they were ready to kind of move on, and I was ready to join the entrepreneurial game. So. Yeah, that's how it happened. Before I came along, it was started back actually in the 70s, was Resort Maps by a journalism student at Yale. His name was Felix von Mustitzker. I'll say that 3 times fast. And and the company changed hands a couple of times till it ended in the hands of Larry and Kathy, and then ultimately with me. Shortly after I acquired Resort Maps, we acquired another company out on the West Coast called Discovery Map, and of course we put the two together, and now have kind of a national footprint of a caricature drawn maps for visitors to great destinations all around the country.
They're a lot of fun, aren't they, Peter? I mean, again, you see them all over the place. I've seen them, in my travels, throughout the country, and I just think they're a lot of fun for people, when they're new to a particular area, So maybe you could talk a little bit about, because I've always been curious, how a typical map is put together. Like maybe we could talk about the map cycle, Peter.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually a really fun experience from our side. So we get together with a new franchisee. That process is probably quite similar to other franchise opportunities. And then once we get together, we plan a trip, and a couple of us here from this office go and visit the territory. And we do the first phase of creating the map. We call the mock-up phase. So one of our production graphic designers will lay out the map. The maps, as you probably know, are not drawn to scale. So we use that kind of license, if you will, to emphasize where the commerce is and the important things to see and do in the area. So we take that trip, which is anywhere from 2 to 4 days, and then we come back, and a member of our production team then will create a simple mock-up of what the map should look like, the footprint of the map. And then we iterate back and forth with the new franchisee to make sure we get the details right. Of course, it's a very straightforward business hours, but the devil's in the details, right? These maps, as you say, they look great, but it's only because we make sure that we get things right. So, the franchisee will tell us, well, that's a one-way street, or there's a traffic sign there, or, various and sundry things. And then we finally agree, okay, this is good. This is the mock-up we want to create a map from. And then we hand off to our lots of photographs plus the mock-up. We hand off to our fine artist, Gary, who and he has an amazing talent, and he draws these maps. And that's kind of the secret.
That's amazing. But, what's interesting, Peter, is, again, because I've been following your organization for quite a long time now, but, of course, as technology has come into the picture, I understand that there's also an app today. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, how the two work together.
Sure, I'd be very happy to. So the map is the map, and I'll just touch briefly on that, and then segue into our digital presence. But the map is not. We don't want to compete with Google Digital Maps or Apple Maps or anybody like that. It is not a navigational tool per se. It's more of a wayfinding tool. I'm now in a new community, and I really want to know what's going on around me. I want to find out where the good places to eat are, or maybe the things to do. Good hiking paths, that kind of thing. So that's really the highest and best function of one of our maps. And then, and from a merchant standpoint, from an advertiser standpoint, the map is a great tool to bring people to the door, right? I mean, it's an advertising piece at the end of the day, and it will bring folks to their door, if they're on the map and they present themselves well. Well, and we feel that we do that well and are very happy with our presence there. But for a long time, I've wanted to complement our print presence with a digital tool. But in my opinion, just another digital advertising piece would be, as my English friends like to say, much for muchness. I don't think it would add tons of value. So we decided instead to create a rewards app that's accessible to small merchants as opposed to, say, the big companies that run the big box stores. And it's very low. We've intentionally created a small footprint from our side financially, so that a merchant can create their own deal, decide what the minimum spend would be, decide what the reward would be, and really control much of their presence themselves. And then we make that available to to users, to folks who use the map, and folks who like to save money when they're doing their favorite things. And we're kind of standing in the middle between the two sides. It's still early days. We're still in kind of an extended launch phase, and that owes very much to COVID and the pandemic.
Yes.
But we're optimistic about the coming year, 22, because we have kind of all of our ducks in a row and are really excited about the launch of Local Loot.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about your franchise owners, Peter. I mean, where do you find your franchise owners, and what do you look for before you take on a new franchisee? I mean, is there any type of characteristics or traits that it's important to you?
Sure, yeah. It's funny, because our opportunity is home based, and again, it's not the kind of middle of the fairway franchise opportunity. We found that a lot of the existing kind of service companies for franchisors, they help us, but they don't. It's not a perfect fit. So we do a lot of our marketing digitally and otherwise ourselves, and more these days. And because it's a diverse group of people that end up coming to be Discovery Map franchisees. Right. And diverse in the sense, like you might say, well, what's the demographic? What's the age? Well, we have 25-year-old franchisees and we have 75-year-old franchisees. Wow. Yeah. So it's a broad-based group, but at the end of the day, I think there's one and probably two really important characteristics important to us. And one is someone who is personable and likes to engage with new people, right? Because at the end of the day, you're out in town, kind of talking to merchants, informing them of a cool product that we can make available to them. So you got to like talking to people, I think. Be comfortable in new relationships. And then on the other hand, that each year a map gets published, it goes through a process like a pre-press, or we call it production process, where we kind of refine all the things that might be happening in the community. Some new advertisers will come on the map, so we'll have to create labels for them and highlight their buildings. If their building isn't drawn, we need to draw it, even though the map already exists. Right. And for that, you need someone who is at least reasonably detail-oriented, willing to kind of engage in a somewhat detailed process of working with our production team to get that map just right.
What is the training like, Peter? I mean, once you decide you do indeed like them, they like you, and they do want to come on board as a franchisee, do they typically come up to headquarters? Is that how it works? I know COVID probably changed things a little bit, but how did it work before or in the future? Yeah,
and it's funny, COVID changed things, and like in a lot of walks of life these days, maybe it introduced us to some good things, So we very much like folks to come up here and see our operation and get to know the team. It's funny, years ago, some of our franchisees used to refer to the group as a family. And to be honest, I kind of didn't engage in that because I thought, well, I have a family, But the longer I've been here, the more I realize it really is. It's a very close-knit group of folks, like-minded people. So we want to we want to engage them. We want to kind of bring them into the tent and get them to know the team here, and so that's important. But not all of the training happens here in Waitsfield. We do a fair bit of it online these days, through video conferences or what have you. And in a lot of cases, we will actually do some training, both sales and otherwise, in the community. So really, there are three components. There's some here, there's some virtual, and there's some local to the franchisee.
I have to ask, Peter, because, the theme of the show last year, it was hard to go through a whole show without talking about COVID. How has people's travel habits changed during COVID?
Dramatically, I think if I had to give you a one-word answer. Right? It was good and bad news for us because obviously in the early days nobody did much of anything except stay home and worry. Correct. But when international travel was very much curtailed, We're an international company, but we're primarily a U.S. based. So it allowed for folks to kind of do some exploring kind of closer to home than they maybe had done in the past. So it was a mixed bag. We lost the international tourists, but we picked up the folks who maybe haven't recently stopped and smelled the roses. So, we took a big hit in 2020. There's no getting around it. But we're definitely digging out of that hole. We're having a good year. And we just closed our books, and we had a really good year this year and are looking forward to a really good year next year. And it's funny, like I said, people did kind of pull in and not do too much traveling, but that's, I think, created lots of pent-up demand. Here we are practically on the eve of Thanksgiving, and everyone I talk to is all excited to get together with friends and family. Let's hope we can do that safely this year and not have the spikes we experienced last year. But, I'm an optimist. I think as we get through the winter season this year and come towards spring, I think Sadly, COVID isn't going to go away like I originally hoped, but I think it won't continue to be a pandemic for much longer, and we can get back to some semblance of normal lives.
We always tell, doing the show such a long time, we tell our listeners, Peter, that, typically when you buy a franchise, I mean, you're getting a couple different things. You're getting training. Of course, you're getting a system, and of course, you're getting a brand. And, Discovery Map International certainly has a strong brand. I imagine that most people are familiar with the product. I saw it somewhere, like in literature. I think it was like 40 million people use Discovery Maps, which is fantastic. So it seems like you have a bit of a brand going on up to this point, don't you?
We do. It's funny. The caricature drawn visitor maps are obviously a thing beyond us. So a lot of times people say, "Oh, I recognize those maps," and they might not immediately put the name to the product, but it's obviously that's my charge to more and more get folks to associate our name with the product, and I think we've made some good strides in the last few years. Like you say, we certainly have a lot of maps around the country and a lot of copies as well. It's funny. I tell everyone, certainly part of the team here, that the key success factor in our business is printing and publishing lots and lots and lots of maps. I want to walk into a Discovery Map community and see maps everywhere, and absolutely that is a key to success.
Do you offer special programs, Peter, or work with chambers of commerce or tourism bureaus?
We do, yeah. We love, well, first of all, our franchisees, we encourage them, even help them kind of engage with chambers or visitors bureaus or business, investment districts initially, and create a way to cooperate with them. A lot of times the Chamber of Commerce will publish a map, but really not want to. You know what I mean? That's not their core competency. So if we can find reasonable terms of trade, then we can kind of step in and help them market their destination and lighten their load and maybe even help their bottom line. And we separate from our franchise opportunity, we have a program for destination marketing organizations. So we very much want to embrace those folks. That they've been good to us over the years, and we like to think we can help them as well.
You've been doing this a long time, Peter. One of the questions when I have someone on the show like yourself is, I have to ask, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? Because there's so much out there today, and we found that, in doing this show such a long time, that a lot of people that are interested in buying a franchise, they're a little confused in the beginning because there's just so much out there today. I mean, from everything you've learned up to this point, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise?
Gee, thanks for that question, Marty. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to answer that, because it's a really good question. I think, first of all, diligence is key, right? We got to understand what we're getting into. So you want to know the opportunity frontwards and backwards and really understand the nuance. And that's not just, you're not going to get that from reading an FDD or a franchise agreement. You're going to get that from talking to franchisees, talking to members of the team, and really getting to know what it's like to be part of that team. And most of all, obviously the opportunity is important, but for me personally, it's about the people, the folks that you're going to work with, right? Ours is an opportunity where the franchisees work with us every year. Every publication cycle they're in, working with our production team, working with our sales team and myself and others. And, it's important that you have a good relationship, a good understanding with the folks that you work with. You know what I mean? It's important, I think, that you get to know them and feel comfortable working with them and hopefully one day become friends.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And so I could ask you the next question too, Peter. I mean, where do you see Discovery Map International? I mean, if you could look into a crystal ball, maybe 3 years, 5 years down the road, where do you see the organization?
Another good question. I hope that we continue to have success in growing the network. There's certainly nearly endless opportunity of great places that could use a map. And I also very much want to how can I say this? Help our franchisees improve their bottom line and in turn their top line, right? So the Local Loot rewards app that we've developed is a direct effort in that direction. And and I think that, like it or not, we live in a digital world. Our print piece is unique in the sense that it's strong among digital. As everyone moves to digital and print suffers, our print really hasn't suffered very much, and I don't expect it will in the foreseeable future. But that's not to say that, we have our eyes closed. I think digital technology is great. We use it in now most of our orders are made online, and I think that we can improve with our online presence, kind of our website. We want to make that more of a destination for curious travelers to get inspiration and ideas about where they might go next and, how they might enjoy themselves while there. Right. I see a bigger network with each unit generating more revenue.
That's terrific. Tough question, Peter, but what's been one of the most interesting things that's happened to you? Because you've been with the organization such a long time now. I'm sure you probably have hundreds of stories, so to narrow it down to one single story would be tough. But does anything stand out over the years that you've been part of the company?
Well, if I were honest, and I am, I would probably talk about COVID, but it sounds like you've talked about that with other guests until now. Yeah, so really, it's kind of the map making journeys that we take from here. Each one, of course, is unique, and there's so much fun. You know what I mean? I've been a traveler all my life. I've lived in Europe for 12 years. I've traveled to Asia, Australia. I've traveled all over the planet, so I love it. And when we get to go to make a new map and a cool new destination, it's really a fun time. Yeah, I'd have to say that's where the action is.
Yeah, and I don't want to simplify the process, Peter, because, I used to be in sales, but to me it seems like it's an easy sell. I mean, if I was a pizzeria or any type of business, I mean, wouldn't you want your business on that Discovery map? You know what I mean? And again, I'm sure it's more difficult to sell than I'm making it sound so simple. It's just go in and say, wouldn't you want your face on this map or your business on this map? But, I mean, it seems like it's a fairly simple sale. You know it much better than I do. But who wouldn't want to be on it, though, right?
Well, that's certainly my opinion. but I think, but sadly not everyone's. It's a great piece. And this is one of the areas where I've been trying to help our franchisees because I think we undervalue it. You can get on a map. You can get a single space out on a map for, in some areas as little as $500 or $600 for a year. And you think about the quality of that impression. You know what I mean? If you get a banner out on a website, it's here and gone in a nanosecond. But a map, you're gonna use it. You're gonna share it with the family. You're gonna stick it in your pocket. Some folks take them home and frame them. So so it's a lasting and a really high quality impression. And I think that there's a lot of value in that. And to your point, I think it's kind of the question really is why wouldn't I be on the map?
Exactly. Well, you can tell I love the product, Peter. I think it's fantastic, and why I was so excited to have you on the show today. What's the best way, Peter, for our listeners to get more information on Discovery Map International, as of course the service and even more so the franchise opportunity? Any websites you can kind of point them to?
Yeah, our main website for travelers is discoverymap.com, and our franchise website is discoverymapfranchise.com. So folks can go there, and we respond very quickly. We'll reach out and engage. We have a really friendly sales team, so we'd love to hear from you.
Well, that's wonderful. It was a privilege to talk to you today, Peter. And I'd love to invite you back over the next year or two as you continue to grow, because I love your franchise model.
Marty, thank you so much. It's been fun, and I appreciate you inviting me in. And, I'd love to do it again.
This has been my pleasure, Peter. We'll be right back with more franchise interviews. Coming up on segment 2, you're going to hear what every franchisepreneur needs to know before buying a franchise. We're going to play a clip from our popular Great Quotes in Franchising podcast right here on Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system.
Coach.
Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed.
Consult.
Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track.
And advise.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
That's franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
Franchisers, are you looking to reach aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise? Are you looking to reach a highly educated audience on franchising? For over 8 years, Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys, and our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919. That's 610-905-2919.
Hi, everyone. This is Marty McDermott, the president of Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. You know, we've been hosting Franchise Interviews many years now, and during that time we've had some incredible quotes on the show. Today's great quote in franchising comes from Tom Scarda, and Tom is a franchise consultant for Franchoice, and he's the author of The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty. And we've had Tom on this show 2 times over the last 14 years, and Tom is great at providing analogies on topics like motivation and entrepreneurship. So today's great quote in franchising is called "It Doesn't Hurt Enough." We'll let Tom explain why.
10 years with Franchoice, helping them to find businesses. And what I find, and you know this from the industry, is that majority of people who look at franchising do not buy a franchise. And the number one reason is fear of the unknown. Yeah. So they go, instead of choosing, at the end of the process, you know, they're looking at great companies because we vet them, we know who's good, who's not, and you can never deny that the companies are not good when you go down the road at looking at them.
Right.
The choice is not what franchise to buy. The choice is the choice between uncertainty and unhappiness.
That's interesting.
And most people go back to the unhappiness, and because there's a comfort in that, right? So at least I get a paycheck. At least I know I have a job. At least I can pay my bills. And I got to tell you, if you think you're on this earth to pay your bills, you're always going to have a mild kind of frustration that goes through your life.
It's very powerful. You know what you said, Tom. You know, it's
we've seen that on the show too. You know, I mean, I've heard numbers like at like 1 out of 100 people will say yes to, you know, going the franchise alternative, or they'll give some kind of like excuse, like, you know, well, it's not perfect, you know. And I remember you even saying this, you know, a long time ago, is, you know, there's not really that always that perfect opportunity. You know what I mean? I mean, there's always. I think the analogy you used a long time ago was, even when, you know, you buy a house, you know what I mean? There's always going to be something with that house that you can always fix, you know what I mean? So there's never that perfect opportunity, and I suspect you get that from a lot of people because they're so terrified of going forward. There's like, well, I don't think this is the perfect opportunity for me. I suspect you probably get that a lot, don't you?
Yeah, and you're right. I think it was in Joe Matthews' great book, Street Smart Franchising.
Yeah.
He talks about that. 1 out of every 100 people that look at franchising actually buy a franchise, and that the thing for me, Marty, is it makes me sad inside, because I talk to these folks that have great backgrounds, they're phenomenal at what they do, and they can easily translate their skills into their own business and really live happily ever after, and they don't, and it's always because of fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm. You use a powerful word, Tom. You know, you used happy. You know, and I think it's interesting that how many people there are out there that are, you know, working day to day, and they're just, you know, as you said, they're paying their bills, you know, but they're not happy, are they? You know, and I know a lot of those people who are working for, let's say, the city, and you know, they're going to get their pension at some point, but they just aren't happy. And I can't imagine working 40 years and not being happy, and you wonder, you know, it's really that powerful, and that's why I think your book is so important. You know, the magic of choosing uncertainty is that, you know, you lived it, haven't you? I mean, you know, I'm sure, you know, you've been through all of those things that a lot of your clients certainly have going through their head, don't they?
Yeah, I've been in their shoes. And that's why I kind of enjoy I love what I do, because I'm really able to speak to people on a, you know, a one-to-one basis that, you know, I not only have empathy, I've been there, I've done it, and you know, maybe it's not for everybody, and that's fine. I get that. Not everybody should buy a franchise, believe me.
Right.
But you know, but when you're there and you're on the cusp, and you know, it's the 11th hour and you have to make a decision, and you run away from it, it's really, really sad. And from my perspective, it is. And I think from their perspective, I just read an article last week that said 86% of Americans want to change their job today.
Wow, that's incredible.
And I think it was
86%.
86% of Americans want to change their job today, and probably maybe 1% will. You know, get out of the corporate rat race. A lot of people will change jobs, and they're going from, you know, one fire to another fire, and they really don't solve anything. But I'll tell you that, you know, a great story that I share with everybody, and I think that it will go very, very well here. If you can imagine for a second, there's these two guys sitting on a porch, like two old hillbillies, right? And they're drinking their sarsaparilla, and they're rocking in their rocking chairs, and one of them has a hound dog, and the hound dog's sitting on the floor, and every once in a while that hound dog lets out a yelp.
Yeah.
So one of these guys, one guy says to the other guy with the dog, "What's wrong with your dog?" And he said, "Nothing's wrong with the dog." So he said, "Well, why does he yelp like that?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, he's laying on a nail." And he said, "Well, why doesn't he get off the nail?" And he said, "Well, I guess it just doesn't hurt bad enough."
Wow, that's a great analogy. We're gonna have to use it. We have this great quotes in franchising podcast. We're gonna have to put that one in there. I haven't heard you tell that story, but I think that's I mean that's a great one. I mean, it does show, you know, how we're willing to live our lives like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It frustrates the heck out of me. And you know, in the book, I give people what I call fuel for change, which are different exercises at the end of a couple of different chapters where you can go through changing your mindset about things.
Yeah.
And you realize after a while, all your stuff, all your baggage in that fear department essentially comes from your parents. and from your upbringing telling you, no,
right,
don't do that, be careful, and if you lose, you're a loser, and that's not the case at all, because when you take a chance, and if it doesn't work out for some reason, there's more life lessons in that failure than there is in any success, and I can tell you that directly from my smoothie experience.
Sure.
There's so much more to learn when you're trying to climb out of a hole than standing on top of a hill.
Yeah, and it's it must be interesting. I'm one of those people, as I mentioned, Tom. My mom is still waiting for me to go apply for the post office. I said I'm going to be 50 years old in 3 years. And I just recently completed my doctorate degree last year, and I think she's still waiting for me to go work for the post office. She just tried to instill that in me as a kid, and maybe that was my reason I went the other direction. It just didn't seem gratifying to me, not to pick on anyone who works for the post office, but I wouldn't have had that. And I love the word you use. You use this word fuel, and we had the great Michael Gerber on our show, and I know you're a fan of his as well.
If you'd like to hear that whole interview with Tom Scarta, all you have to do is go to franchiseinterviews.com. You can go to our franchises listed alphabetically page, and you can find Tom Scarta there. Or you can go to franchise interviews listed by category, and you can go to our franchise experts page and listen to the interview there. And finally, we just want to thank everyone for making this Great Quotes in Franchising podcast such a big hit. And we'll see you again soon with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising from Franchise Interviews. Take care, everyone.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.